Hi everyone, so today we're going to make a Paperdori in pocket size. So this is an example of the finished product. So you can see we have our elastic closure. Inside I have some old inserts for storage, and this insert has 4 straps in it. So this is what we're going to make. So what you'll need to make this is some scrapbooking paper, crafting paper, 12 by 12, or you could use A4 or letter size, depending on the thickness of your paper, whether or not it's double-sided, or which patterns you prefer to have the inside and outside will depend if you cut 1 or 2 pieces or if you fold it in half. If you have a thinner paper, this one I made previously is made with a thinner paper that's single-sided, so I actually folded the paper in half. So it has the same pattern inside and out, and that just made it a little thicker than if it was one single sheet of thin paper. This paper is a little thicker. I could probably get away with just having the one layer of paper and having one pattern on the outside and one pattern on the inside. You're also going to need a laminating pouch, some sharp scissors, a ruler, an eraser, a pencil. I'm using a crocodile to punch the holes for my elastic, but you can use any kind of smaller single hole punch, a corner rounder because I prefer to have round corners, and a paper trimmer to cut easily. You'll also need your elastic cord. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do, I'll just move some of these things that I don't need right now over to the other side. The first thing we're going to do is cut our paper for our cover. So we are going to cut 6 inches this way, and then we're going to cut 8.5 inches this way. So to unlock my trimmer, I will cut, so basically a 12 by 12 piece of paper, we're cutting it in half. Then turning and cutting at 8.5 inches. And I just thought of something else we could use, but I can probably get away with it with my pencil. We're going to score some lines for the spine of our notebook. So we're going to score at 3 3/4 on our longer side. You could just measure, draw a line and fold, or if you have a trimmer with a scoring blade, use that. I don't, I just use my trimmer, and then I generally just run down the edge with a bone folder, or in this case I'm just using the tip of my mechanical pencil. Okay, you can then score at 4 3/4, or you can just turn and score at 3 3/4 again. Basically it's just to give us a 1-inch spine. Just move my trimmer out of the way for now. Okay, it's very hard to see on camera, so I'm just going to fold along those lines. Probably see better on this side now because it's a plain pattern. You can see we have our 1-inch spine. The next thing I'm going to do is mark the spots where I'm going to end up punching holes for my elastic. So I'm going to need to mark 5 holes. So what I do first is I draw a little line at 1/4 inch from the edge of my notebook. You want to draw these lines kind of fairly lightly because you want to erase them and you don't want to see them in your finished notebook. So I'm just going to draw along there. And again at the other end. The reason I'm just folding is because it's hard to see where my spine is, and that just makes it easier. So I'm not drawing a big line when I don't need to do one. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is mark along here at 1/4 inch So this is our line at the top. So I'm marking on that line at 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to do that again at the bottom. So I'm going to mark 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 of an inch. What I'm going to do now is that middle dot, the 1/2 inch, I'm going to draw a light pencil line connecting those two dots. Then I'm going to measure from the edge of my notebook along that center line and mark at 3 inches. Once I've done that, I'm just going to color that in as a circle so I know that's where I'm going to punch the center hole for my center elastic. Then along the bottom line, I'm going to mark that 1/4 inch mark and the 3/4 inch mark because that's where I'm going to punch holes. And again at the top, I'm going to mark that 1/4 inch and the 3/4 inch. Now that I've done that, I can just erase those pencil lines that I don't need. So you can just see we have our 5 holes marked. The next thing I'm going to do is put this cover into my laminating pouch and run it through my laminator. I always have trouble opening laminating pouches. Okay, I'm off to laminate. I'll be back in a moment. So I'm back from the laminator. The reason I tend to score and fold the lines for the spine before we laminate is it just makes it easier once that's been laminated to remember where to fold. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trim the excess laminate from around the edges. So I'm going to bring my trimmer back in. Because I did it fairly close to the edge here, I don't need to trim, but I'm going to trim the other 3 sides. I apologise if you can hear the cat's bell ringing in the background. He's hanging around today. Okay. Move my trimmer back off to the side. So there's my finished cover. So as I said, if you fold it along those score lines before you've laminated, it makes it much easier once it's laminated to find back where they are and to fold it again. So you can see it's starting to take shape. The next thing I'm going to do is get my crocodile, and I'm going to use the smaller sized hole punch. And I'm going to punch the edge holes. Sometimes things get caught in the crocodile, that's why I always tend to give it a little shake when I'm finished to make sure nothing's caught in there. Alright, so we've now punched the edge holes. As you can probably guess, I'm not going to be able to punch the center hole with my crocodile. If you have like an eyelet setting punch from scrapbooking or something, you could use that to do this, or a long reach hole punch. I don't, I'm just going to use the point of my scissors. And these are not the scissors I usually use, and they don't want to go through. Ah, there we go. Okay. It looks a little messy right now. Once we've got our elastic in, it'll look much better. So the next thing I'm going to do, excuse me, is get my elastic organised, which I should have done beforehand. Okay, sorry about that. So I've already pre-measured this elastic loop to be my closure. So I've already tied it off. I'm going to just thread the loop through here. Now you can see that's how we close our notebook. Okay, so the next thing I have to do is try and undo the knot on this other elastic so that I can thread it. This video is going to seem very choppy and I apologize for that. So this is my elastic cord I'm going to use to make the strings for my book. The way I thread it is I look at the holes as hole 1, hole 2, hole 3, hole 4. So we're going to start by going out from the inside, out hole 1. The elastic cord I'm using is kind of thick, so if you have a thinner elastic you could probably put it on a needle and thread it through the holes. Mine doesn't fit because it's just that little bit too thick, so I just try and do it by hand. So we're threading through and we're going to leave a tail around halfway down our notebook. So now we've gone out hole 1, we're going to bring our elastic in through hole 2. We're now going to go out hole 4. Now, when you start making your strings, you kind of want them a little tight. It doesn't matter if your notebook bows a little bit. You can see that's slightly bowed. You don't want it bowed in half, obviously, but it doesn't matter if it's bowed slightly because your elastic will stretch over time and loosen up. So I like to have them fairly snug. So we've gone out hole 1, in hole 2, out hole 4. We're now going to go in hole 3. Okay. Now at this point, if you're happy to just have 2 straps in your book and use jump bands, you can tie it right off there. Otherwise, you can keep going and repeating your pattern to add 4 strings to your notebook, which is what I'm going to do. This is okay. So I've finished threading through. I'm just going to tie off my elastic now. You can see my notebook's a bit bowed. Once I put some inserts in, so these are just some old inserts from previous months that I'm not using. So I'm just going to put these in to show you how it'll look. You can see it starts to flatten out your notebook straight away. The last strap's hiding. Okay, so you can see once you've got your inserts in, it's not really bowing anymore. Close it with your strap and you're done. That's how to make a pocket size Paperdori. Thanks for watching.